salutations, my dearest friends. My name is Samantha, and today in this video, I'm going to be breaking down all of the historical romance terminology. So if you like dukes, earls, and wallflowers, but you're not too sure what all of that means, don't worry, I got you. I'm going to be breaking it all down. This is actually part 2 to my series. Yesterday, I uploaded a video where I broke down all of the time periods and the eras that are typically written in historical romance. I will link that video down below. I gave a lot of book recommendations as well. For this one, it's like back to the basics. I'm going to be breaking down all of the historical romance terminology, all of the popular phrases that you see in historical romances. I definitely want to make this a series. I feel like there is so much to talk about when it comes to historical romance, and I love chatting about it. I have to be honest, it's one of my favorite things to talk about. I'm going to try to keep this video brief. I might nerd out a little bit because, like I said, it's just so fun to talk about. Hope that you find this video interesting and helpful, all of the above, with lots of love. Let's just go ahead and jump right in. All right, I have a lot of notes for this video. Hopefully I don't misspeak. If you have any fun facts or would like to add anything, let me know in the comments down below. Let's talk about all of the ranks and the peerage. Although the Regency time period wasn't that long, it is still one of the most popular time periods, I think, when it comes to historical romances, and the most proper, that has all of the titles and different terminology. So that's kind of what most of this is going to be talking about. People who have titles are often referred to as the peerage, the ton, polite society. All of those terminologies are basically talking about noblemen, British noblemen, and people in London who are of high ranking. Obviously, we have princes and kings, but you don't get a lot of historical romances that's based on them. So we first have the Duke, who is like right under a prince. That's the highest title you can get. Then you have a Marquess, then you have an Earl, then you have a Viscount, and then you have a Baron. So I'm going to talk about each one individually, but that is the hierarchy. And during this time period, these titles meant everything in society about who you were, who you married, parties you were invited to. Like, so many things were based on appearance and titles. So the very first one is the Duke, and if you are addressing a Duke, you would usually address them as Your Grace. If you were marrying a Duke and inheriting that title as a woman, you would be a Duchess. The way people gain their titles are multiple reasons, really. It is definitely something that passes on from generation to generation. So your father was a Duke, and his father was a Duke, and his father was a Duke, and it kind of just passes down. But ultimately, these are titles that are given to by a king. Titles are also based on region and like territory. So sometimes, for example, you will hear someone be referred to as the Duke of Ralston. Ralston is not his name, that is the territory that his title is from. Duke is his title, and then Ralston is like his homestead. And obviously they had their regular names, but in polite society it wasn't common for you to address someone by their first name unless they were given permission or you were very familiar with them. Moving on, next on the line we have our Marquess or Marquise. I'm actually not sure how to pronounce this, feel free to correct me. And then if you were to marry a Marquise, you would be a Marchioness. In polite society and public, these people are usually addressed as lords. Oh, I forgot to mention, some people have asked, like, what do dukes do? Like, what was the point of their title? So a lot of these people were noblemen, and a lot of them were a part of parliament. So they were a part of passing laws, approving laws. A lot of them would work with the king, had armies, and they would assist the king. Most of them would inherit land, and they would be like rulers over that individual land. I think about it as kind of like how we have mayors and congressmen. Like, that was like their version of that during that time. If their specific land was very plentiful in crops, and they would provide that to the king as service. Grievances that the town had would essentially be brought up to them. And of course, a lot of the court made up of these people with titles, the noblemen, their daughters, their families, etc., etc. So with these ranks, it is always the eldest son that inherits the title, the responsibilities, the land, all of that. If the first son dies, it goes to the second son. That's why you might hear like an heir and a spare. So the second son would usually inherit that if the first son died. If the first son has kids, then it goes to his kids. Depending on how many kids that family has, it can go to a cousin, but it does stay in the family and will just like bounce to each eligible male. Second sons are men who are still in polite society technically, but they don't really have a title. If you want to know more history about historical romance, more than just what I'm talking about right now, there's an Instagram page. Instagram page is History and Harlots, and she gives a ton of really, really interesting historical facts that kind of tie in with historical romance. I learn something every time she posts something. Sons are usually referred to as like gentlemen, sirs, misters. Okay, so moving back to the ranking, Stockings, we have an earl, and if you were to marry an earl, you would be a countess, and they are also referred to as lords and ladies. Next up is a viscount. That is how to properly pronounce it. For many, many years, I was saying viscount because that's how it's spelled. But no, it is a viscount. So if you didn't know that, if this is the first time you're hearing that, it's fine. It took me a while to know as well. And if you were to marry a viscount, you would be a viscountess. Again, you would be referred to as like lord and lady. Lastly, we have baron, and if you were to marry a baron, you would be a baroness. A lot of these people with ranks are going to be referred to as gentlemen in your books, and that is basically meaning someone of good breeding. And by good breeding, that means they come from a high-ranked English family, maybe a wealthy family. So now we're going to be talking about specific terms that you might see in your historical romances. The first one is the marriage mart or the marriage market. A specific time when people would travel from their country homes. It's like the hub where everyone gathered to make matches, basically. Take place over a couple of months with a lot of balls that people would gather, a lot of parties, a lot of hostings, things like that. So it's like the social time of the year. Basically, when young girls all gather together in the marriage mart or the marriage market, it's not necessarily like a specific place, but it's like all of the ballrooms and the dances that they attend to find a husband. I just want to give some general terminology as I'm going through this video. Basically, in romance, you have two people who are getting together. There might be some conflicts, but in the end, they end up together. And that is kind of what constitutes a romance, is that our couple is going to end up together. I have two different versions of this. Charles from Books on Stereo did a very, very interesting and in-depth video about what classifies as a romance. I will link his video down below. It was amazing. I highly recommend you check it out. But I will quickly explain the two differences of like ending. So you have your happily ever afters, or HEAs. It means that the couple is together and you get a few epilogues. In the epilogue, you get them years and years later. They're married, they're making some babies, maybe they're traveling the world. I know some people don't love like a bunch of epilogues, but I do. Like, I want to see our couple old and happy. Like, I don't know, maybe that's just me. On the other end, you have your happy for now, so like HFN, and that basically means like, yes, our couple did get together. Maybe you don't get to see what happens after they get together. You don't get that fast forward into the future. Watch my videos, you probably already know what a step back is, but I'm going to talk about it really, really briefly. If you did not know what a step back is, this is the cover of just a standard historical romance, and if it has this little flap that has an additional cover of like a lover's embrace, this picture right here is considered a step back. Step backs are very, very well loved in historic romance. We absolutely adore them. I love step backs as much as I do. There is a hashtag on romance Instagram. It is literally called Step Back Saturday. Historical romance cover, you might also see it referred to as a bodice ripper or a clinch cover. And then a clinch cover is basically a picture of a lover's embrace, so some type of moment between the characters on the cover. It's what our romance hearts love and adore. Alrighty then, let's move back into the specific Regency terminology. So let's talk about all of the names that a heroine might be called. Alright, here we go. We have our wallflowers. I feel like this is the most popular description of a proper English lady. Flowers, by definition, are usually unmarried women who tend to fall in the background, maybe blend with the wallpaper, which is, I believe, how they got that title. More shy, they're more subdued, they're more quiet, maybe not someone that a bunch of people are trying to court. Flowers can come in all types of descriptions and personalities. For instance, there is the Wallflower series by Lisa Kleypas, and that follows 4 girls who have all been deemed as wallflowers. None of them have gotten married. They decide to come together and form this really awesome girl gang. They make a pact that they're gonna find each other husbands, and it follows all of their stories. Total opposite of a wallflower is a diamond of the first water. It is the most sought after, the most beautiful, the most classy debutante of the season. Typically, people were coming into their first season at the age of 17, so they were very young. Except we have our blue stockings, and that is basically a definition of an intellectual woman. In age, it would be someone who is very bookish, very educated. That would be a blue stocking. And we have our spinsters. So that is basically any woman that has gone through a few seasons and they are still unmarried. But a lot of women would go into their first season when they were 17, and the idea is that they would get married within their first season. So anyone who had gone through a few seasons without getting married, they would get labeled as a spinster, and these were typically ladies who were in the age of 23 and 26. I am 23 and I am married, and I would have been a spinster, friends. Think about it, 23, 26, still very, very young, but not in this time period. If you want to go on the complete opposite, you have your ladies of the nights, your mistresses, your escorts, you know, the people who had the most fun. All right, let's talk about the men. So the first term that I think is most used is a rake, and that is basically a Regency version of a playboy. A player, a womanizer. It was really funny because Bridgerton was doing like a lot of interviews, and the actor who plays Simon basically described a rake as a Regency fuckboy, and I'm like, yeah. Basically, rake is not to be mistaken for a rogue or a scoundrel. No. Rogue or a scoundrel would be a part of scandals. Those are people who do duels. Those are people who break the law. Those are people who are not gentlemen. They're different. I see them talked about as one and the same, but they're kind of different. The thing you will hear a ton when it comes to our ladies is that our ladies are a part of a scandal or they are ruined. Basically, when you're thinking of Regency time periods and even like the Georgian time period, any historical romances, appearance is everything. So if a young unmarried lady was even left in the room alone, unchaperoned with a man, oh baby, she was ruined, okay? Caught in a compromising position, then she's also ruined, and that would be like being caught kissing. Best historical romances is when it has the scandal, and then maybe our heroine is a little bit ruined, and they have to get married, and it's a marriage of convenience. Ugh. It's just a good time. Terrans, especially debutantes, are very unaware of what happens between married couples. They were essentially kept in the dark, and I think a good book to describe this is The Duke and I. Many of these women were not told about sex and husbands and all of those things until like the day of their wedding. If you were compromised, you might need a special license. You will hear that a lot in historical romances, and that is basically the man appealing to the court, trying to get a special license to marry our heroine in a very short period of time. For whatever reason your special license was denied and you wanted to elope, that would be called Gretna Green, which a lot of historical romances talk about that. Gretna Green is actually a place. It was a place in Scotland right along the borders of England, and a lot of people would go, travel over there, get married really quickly, and the reason that they would go over there is because they didn't need a special license, they didn't need any approval, you basically just needed a witness, and you were married, and oftentimes the witness was the person marrying you, or a blacksmith who was making your ring, or someone who worked there. It wasn't as traditional as England had it to be. Being a Gretna Green was very scandalous though. Very scandalous, darlings. That's another term. I wrote down a ton of notes, but I feel like I kind of already discussed the more popular ones. Talking about just general romance terminology, we have our alpha heroes, our beta heroes, our cinnamon roll heroes. An alpha hero is what you would expect, a very strong, dominant male. Usually he is a rake. We have our beta males who are just, you know, they're cinnamon roll heroes. My favorite, personally. So if you ever hear someone referred to as a cinnamon roll hero, it basically means a softer hero, someone who is a complete sweetheart to our heroine. That is historical romance terminology 101 for you. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Sorry if it seemed really basic. I just wanted to like break down all of the terminology because like sometimes you're reading things and you're like, what does that even mean? That's all I have for you guys. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend time with me. It means the absolute world to me. I hope you guys are all staying happy and healthy, and I'll see you in tomorrow's video.